but where is their willingness to learn, perhaps, when it comes to that dichotomy right there. So number 3, individual artistry does not mean challenging the conductor's aesthetic, but collaborating to enhance it. And hopefully you're working with a conductor who's a collaborator, not a dictator. You know, we've had those conductors, but we've had all types of different conductors. My favorite, and the kind that I strive to be, is the one who is the lens for your artistry to come through with our shared vision, not Andrew's way. You know what? You know, I have the stake on how Mozart goes. Come on, right? We all have our own experiences and wealth of feelings and ideas about Mozart. It shouldn't just be one person's way. And I bet, you know, more than, you know, 3 heads are better than 1, they say. Well, 75 heads and individual artists are going to come up with a great interpretation. And then the last one, individual artistry does not mean being inflexible in your artistry or technique, but being super flexible. The big tenet of improv is yes and. If you're going to be an improv artist, you are responding to whatever your partner is with yes and we have to be that way in a choir as well. I might come in and I say, well, my voice teacher told me to do X, Y, or Z, and this is the right way, and it's going to hurt my voice otherwise. And certainly, if your conductor is asking you to do something that you know is detrimental to singing, don't, you know, talk to them afterwards. But we're not meant to come into the rehearsal and say, this is how I sing, this is the only way to sing, this is, you know, we have to be flexible when we get in there, because it's about collaboration. All right, so that's my 2 cents. I'm going to turn it back over to Jenny. And that's all on the handout if you haven't done none of the handout, those 4 little Yoda moments.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to start with exploring the text with At the River here. So I'm just going to give you a minute. I know we sang through it a little bit, but you probably were thinking more about the notes than you were about really what the text was saying. So I'm kind of following my bullet points here. When I look at a piece of music, when I look at the text, I want to read through what it is, and I want to find what's the main theme of the text. And I encourage you, please, these next few questions I ask, write your answer into the chat, because it's almost as if we're just in a classroom or in an ensemble, and people can say what they feel they would be thinking. So this is kind of a participation thing where you write your answer into the chat box here. So take a minute or a couple seconds here and read through the text without thinking about the melody or anything like that. And then maybe start thinking about, you know, what is the main theme of this text? What's the... Joyce said, gathering together in beauty and peace. Andrew says, it is saying yes to a vision of hope and peace. Deborah, heaven is going to be great. Unity within community. The goal is getting to the river so we can gather with the saints who have gone before us. These are all great. Yes, absolutely. Hope and expectation for the joys of heaven. Yeah, these are great. Awesome. So then if you look at the different stanzas, think about how the mood is changing between each stanza. Pat said from action to observation. There's a question in the first stanza, right? They're asking, shall we? And then in the second stanza, we're answering, yes, we will gather at the river. And then even if you go further in the third stanza, we're saying soon we will gather. And that kind of, to me, gives me this feeling of hopefulness. And not to get ahead of myself here, but in that third stanza, you know, it's a forte dynamic, fortissimo. So there's this building of hope that I see, more anticipation. Yeah. Great. So, and then the final thing that maybe you can think about as you're reading through these different stanzas is, you know, we said it was the goal is getting to the river, gathering with the saints. You know, what kind of picture is coming to your mind if you were to close your eyes, or maybe as you sing, you were singing through the melody when Andrew was playing for us. Was there a picture that came into your mind already of this river?
Jenny, do you want to sing through it after this first thing, or do you want to go on to your next?
I think let's sing through it, and then we'll go into a little bit more of the kind of getting into text. Yeah, I love the picture. Everyone's talking about flowing, the community of people. I love the word crystal in the first verse. It makes me just think of this beautiful crystal clear blue water that you can see through. Yeah, all these descriptive words. That's great. So these are just some things that if you're just sitting down to a song, really thinking about the text and kind of ask yourself some of these questions as you're going through. So now, yes, Andrew, if we could go back and as we've kind of thought and put these images in our heads, try singing this again and see if that makes a difference in how you're singing it.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready, go.
So we're going to go a little bit deeper into finding some words that stand out to us. And I'm going to put this, some text up in front. I'm going to share it here. Let's see. See if I can do this. Okay. So one thing that you can do to go even further with kind of the text and thinking about which words should maybe get more emphasis and whatnot, we're going to do it this way tonight, but there's plenty of other ways that you can try something like this. Is just, you know, if you wanted to, you could have someone stand up and volunteer to read it and give inflection to just find specific words to give more emphasis to and have everybody else listen. But we're going to all just speak it together, and the words in yellow are the ones that you're going to give a little bit more emphasis to and inflection to. So just take a minute and read through it one time. And then Andrew, if you could play, let's do it on an A. And something that instead of singing your part, try chanting it. So if you could give us an A pitch, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to sing it on the A pitch the whole way through, keeping the rhythm the same, but just staying on that one note and still giving inflection to those notes that are in yellow. Oh, hold on. Andrew, you're on mute, buddy.
Unmute. Sorry, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. If there's a word, if they would like to choose words that aren't yellow to be their yellow words, is that okay as we go through, or do you want us to stick with your yellow words right now?
That's perfectly fine, but I do have
might have our own idea.
That's totally fine. I do have a second option on the next slide to just switch it up. That way they can kind of, so if they want to do that, absolutely. But there is a second slide where I've changed up which words are in yellow. So if they want to wait and try it then the next time too, that's totally fine as well.
All right, here's the A. 2, 3, 4.
Bright angel feet have trod with its crystal tide forever.
3, 4.
Do you want to try the second verse too, or we can?
Oh, sure. Ready? 2, 3, 4.
Great. So then here's a different idea, different option. Okay. So we'll kind of look at it for a second, maybe speak it once, and then we'll go back and try it again. Okay. Andrew, you want to give us our A and try chanting it? We'll chant it one time through with both verses, and then we can go back and try it maybe just with melody on the first verse after that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So then, so now we'll put the melody back in, or you can put your part back in just on the first verse. We won't go into the second verse, but try, and you can change up. So actually, I'll stop sharing so that you don't have those yellow words in front of you. So you can pick now which words maybe stood out to you. Sometimes something else I like to do is if you have a piece of music that you can mark up with color, then I like to either draw a dot or color above, a color dot above certain words that I want to give more inflection to. And sometimes I just sing through with only those words, and I think of the other words in rhythm. But so Andrew, if you could start us at the beginning and pick your words that you feel like you want to give that have more meaning to you, that are more important.
I see cropping up in the chat box other people's suggestions of words that are important, which is great, which is the whole point of what we're doing right now, is to get you to think as an artist, not just, am I singing the right note and the right rhythm, but how am I singing this? And absolutely right now, emphasize whatever you want. Your conductor will have his or her preferred things, and I'm sure they will tell you, and that's the being flexible part. But what we're trying to get you to do is think about coming into the piece with an idea. And then we can go from there. The conductor loves that. I would love for my singers to all come in with an idea, and then we can come together on what it's going to be. All right, here we go, sharing screen. I'm gonna start right on this time. So here's the tenor note. Alto note's the same. Soprano note. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks, Andrew, for playing that. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully you found what words maybe meant more to you, and you felt like you were able to shape a bit more of the phrases or your part. Even the alto part, you know, when we were singing all those F notes, all at for like 3 measures or whatever, maybe you could find some words like crystal, bright, that have more meaning than the and is and of. Okay. And then just the last thing, I won't get too much into this and I'll pass it over to Andrew again, but look at patterns, you know, thinking about the melodic contour and how the melody is shaped. One thing I love is if you think about the 8th notes that they have on the words flowing, they always have these steady 8th notes on the words flowing by the throne of God. And it just, again, it makes me think of this steady flowing river. And thinking about dynamics, how we start off softer in some of our first stanzas where it's that anticipation, it's the question, and answering, yes, we will. And then by the 3rd stanza, we're fortissimo and we're saying, yes, soon we will be at the river. And there's more certainty to it, I think. So finding those patterns and looking at articulations and rhythms. And I think Andrew's gonna help us with looking at more of that and comparing to another piece as well.
Great. So we want to make sure we have plenty of time for question and answer. So this is not a long portion of the topic or the talk tonight, but we'll get a little bit into the weeds because I'm such a big music nerd. And so when I get a new piece of music, whether I'm singing or conducting, these are the things that my brain starts to do right away. So you're welcome. You get to sit in my brain for a little bit here. But we've been talking about your artistry. We've been talking about the conductor's artistry. The person in the room who we haven't talked about yet is the composer. And when a composer sets a text, they certainly have a point of view as to how that text is going to go and what the melody is going to be. It is the conductor's job and the choir's job to uncover the composer's intent, and then for the most part agree with it. Some composers are very strict about what they write. Other composers leave off a lot of room for interpretation. So we've got two pieces. If you've got them side by side, that's great. Or two different windows, that's great. Pilgrim's Hymn and Shall We Gather at the River, both by American composers, but very different composers. And so trying to uncover intent. And again, this brings into your individual artistry. We want you as singers to come with your ideas and to be able to uncover some of these things. It makes the conductor's job a lot easier because they're not dragging it all out. But B, it makes it more meaningful for you going through the process to say, I'm more than just a cog in this machine. My voice really matters. My artistry matters. My feelings and my interpretation of this matter. But we can be guided and educated in our guesses on what the composer means. So meter is where we're going to start. What meter does the composer set the text in? What does meter do? Meter organizes beats. We have strong beats and weak beats. Common time is 4/4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shall we gather by the river, right? Aaron Copland could have set this in 3. Shall we gather by the river where the bright angel feet have? It doesn't quite make sense. It lends itself to 4/4, right? So there's a natural cadence, but composers do all sorts of wacky things because they're trying to interpret it a certain way. Meter reinforces or detracts from natural text recitation. So it informs how we say it. Shall we gather by the river? Shall we gather by the river? It's right there. And so unless your conductor says, we're singing this non-espressivo, no expression, shall we gather by the, then it is incumbent upon us to put in text stress based upon how the meter goes. Look over at Pilgrim's Hymn real quick, and I'll share my screen over on Pilgrim's Hymn. I am on the wrong window. Let me find the right window. Here we go. Let me zoom in just in case. That's not letting me zoom in, but you've got yours. Paulus uses multiple different meters in this. We start off with 4/4, then 5/4, then 4/4. He throws in some 3/4s, some 2/4s. And so why? Why is he doing this? Because meters tell us how to phrase, and they give us the strong and weak beats. Even B, and we'll get to rhythm in a moment. This is just meter. For we call on your name to ask you, oh God. 1, 2. When we seek for the words to glorify you. All right, neat thing, and this is nerdy. This is totally nerdy. If you skip to the end of the first verse, which is, what page is this? Page 5. He throws in a 3/4 bar. And here's the cool thing. 3 in Christian music is a lot of times signed for the Trinity. And what do we have here is the text, Holy Spirit. So Paulus is throwing that in there. What your conductor does with that is what they're going to do with that. But kind of neat to know that those things happen through meter. When you go into triple meter, this was used back even in the medieval ages. Triple meter in Christian music was a sign of the Trinity, and duple music was more about your corporeal experience of what was going on. So a little hearkening there. Nerdy, I know. All right, rhythm real quick. Let's stick with Pilgrim's Hymn. Let's just look at this first phrase, even. He puts the half note right at the beginning. He's trying to enhance this word. Your conductor doesn't need to say that, right? It's right there. Even before we call on your, what's the next important word that the composer thinks? Name. He gives it 3 full beats. What is your conductor going to do with this? What are you going to do with this as an artist? You can see it right there. It's on the page. To ask gets 2 beats versus you only gets 1 beat. So we're seeing the composer's intention here, how he uses the rhythms. Words to glorify, or it goes with text stress, glorify, but it's also, you know, it's longer than other things. So we're seeing what the composer finds important by how he, in this case, sets the rhythm. If we go back to our Copland, and let me zoom in a little bit. Shall we gather by the river where bright angels' feet have trod? Now, Copland is bound by the fact that this song existed before Copland said it, right? This is a folk song. There's only so much that he can do to alter it. And Copland did, if you listen to all of his American folk songs, he does alter them. But this one, he stays pretty strict to what the folk song was. But then we have to start thinking, well, why did whoever sang this song first sing it like this? What do we get out of these dotted figures? Gather by the river. What is the meaning here? And that's up to your interpretation again, right? In combination with the meter, in combination with the dynamics and things like that. Why is the rhythm the way it is? What is important here? What are we trying to get across? The third thing is tessitura. Tessitura, if it's a word that you're unfamiliar with, that's sort of the range with the song pieces or the song sings. So there are high tessituras, low tessituras, in the medium tessitura. What is the tenor tessitura at the beginning of this piece? It's high. What is the soprano tessitura? Medium, alto, medium. What color? Tessitura accomplishes color pretty much predominantly. It creates a world of sound. With tenors high, with a tenor voice close to their note, other voices, what sound world are we trying to create? Bach did this all the time. This is a Bach trick. When you ask your tenors to sound like your sopranos and altos, they are angels. That's what Bach thought. That's not what every composer thinks, but it's a great place to start. Why not start with Bach and go from there? And maybe Copland wrote something about it. Let's go through this piece. As we go, what happens to the tessitura? This first verse, it stays pretty similar. Basses are high-ish in their tessitura, right? We don't have lots of low notes. When we get to yes, we'll gather by the river, everything hops up. The tessitura gets higher. What kind of sound world is the composer going for here? What sort of, and it's piano. So high, soft voices. How can you as an artist bring that color into your sound? How are you going to sing that? As it gets louder, the tessitura broadens. You can see the basses start to descend, but we're still rather high. We get to this soon we'll reach the shining river part. Altos take the melody. What is the character of the alto versus the character of the soprano in music? In a stereotypical way, in your experience, what does it mean for the altos to have the melody and the sopranos to be up high? What are we trying to say? If you're an alto with the melody, what character are you? What can you bring to that? Basses are doing their declamatory bum, bum, and it's descending, right? It's getting lower. We're getting to earth. What is the meaning as the altos and the basses have the most compelling lines here? Is this because the composer's thinking it's more of an earthly experience versus we started off the piece in more of an angelic experience? How does that change how we sing it? These are all things that we can get based upon tessitura. If we skip back to the Paulus, what's the tessitura for this piece? Where is the band of notes, high, middle, or low? Everybody's kind of in the middle. What kind of sound world is Paulus going for with everybody sort of in their natural voice range? What is this prayer supposed to mean, or this text supposed to mean when it's set? What if it had been set with the tessitura really high? or the tessitura really low. But it's not. So he chose to put it in our natural kind of speaking range almost. And that informs how we sing it as an artist. And then the last thing I'll say is looking at markings. You'll see in Paulus, there are very few markings compared to the Copeland, which is marked all over the place. Aaron Copeland had a very specific idea about how he wanted Shall We Gather at the River interpreted as far as dynamics go and phrasing goes and where the crescendi are and decrescendi are, or diminuendi are. And Paulus leaves it up to the person performing it a little bit more. So a big rule of thumb is never do something the same way twice, right? If it repeats, you got to do something different with it the next time around. And this Paulus piece is the same thing 2 times in a row. We get to page 5 where we had that cool 3/4 bar, and then we start over again. And it goes to the end. And he gives you some dynamics, but they're not very different than the beginning dynamics. So then how are you as an artist going to vary it the second time around? Your conductor will have ideas, but it'll be better for the choir if you come in with some ideas too. Because then your mind is flexible, you're open to artistry, you're open to making those changes. All right, so I'm going to pause myself there and let Jenny wrap things up.
Okay, I think we are at the point of questions, right? I believe.
And we know that, people need to leave when they need to leave, so you will not hurt our feelings if you say, okay, thanks, bye everybody, that was great. But we are certainly here to answer questions and to keep the conversation going. Or if you have thoughts, right? This is about you as an individual artist. So maybe there's something that we haven't said that you would like to add as well. Let me check our chat.
I love the comment about all tenors thank their angels.
Yeah.
We love our tenors. Thanks, Marilyn. I think I depend too much on the conductor.
Yeah, I think that maybe that should have been the subtitle for tonight's talk, is maybe I depend too much on the conductor. I love that. And us conductors are a little bit egomaniacs. I get it. So we can fill a room for sure, and sometimes not leave enough space in the room for everybody else. So it's that collaborative spirit. And having a conductor, hopefully your conductor values you as more than just a voice and values you as an artist as well. So Jenny, we have a comment. If everyone interprets different than the choir, may not sound good. What are your thoughts?
I still think it comes back to it's a balance between mastering this, having the skills like we've talked about in the past. We talk about the singing with the good technique and everyone's matching their pure vowels and the choir sounding that way. But I don't necessarily think that if you're interpreting something different than the person next to you, that will change if the choir sounds bad or not. I think it just brings more heart into your sound. I think it makes you more aware of what you're doing in that moment. I don't know. You might want to, do you have other things to add to that, Andrew?
I'll offer an anecdote. When I was in my early 20s and living in Seattle, I sang with a group, Seattle Pro Musica, and it was common knowledge that if you were a good singer in the choir, you got placed in the back row towards the middle. So the closer you were to the back and the closer you were to the middle, you knew your pecking order. And in the last concert of the year, I made it to the back row and I was towards center and I was sitting next to Darcy Morrissey, and we're friends on Facebook still. And I remember turning to Darcy after the first rehearsal and I said, Darcy, you sing every piece as though it's an aria. as though, and not in an operatic way, but as though it's her solo. You know, you sing everything so expressively the whole time. Why do you do that? She, you know, the director didn't ask for you to do all those things. And she said, well, why wouldn't I? How does me not being my most musical, how does me not being my best artist help this choir? And I never heard the conductor yell at Darcy for doing too much or for being too expressive, you know, that sort of thing. Darcy didn't stick out, right? She wasn't the loudest singer in the room. She had loud ears. She was responsive, but she brought her own artistry. And I'll never forget that. And, you know, so I try to do it too. And I've never had a conductor yell at me for being artistic and for being expressive.
Yeah.
John says, I was thinking about the Paulus piece with the fact that he set each part in our natural ranges suggests the common cry of humanity to the Almighty. Hey, I think that's a really astute thought there. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's beautiful, beautiful sentiment. John says, as a conductor, my takeaway from tonight is that I have to keep my ego in check. Oh, hey, I like that too. We'll get some snap. I'm sure there's some people snapping, you know, under here. Speaking of directors, if you, our last session is a conductor roundtable, where if there's anything that you haven't dared to ever ask in a rehearsal, all the people that have been doing panels, plus Bill, the founder of the organization, will be there, and you can just throw us your nastiest comments and questions that you've never wanted to ask in a rehearsal. So that's what that's for as well, as far as keeping egos in check.
Okay, so John said, Jennifer, are you saying that we should let the choir do their thing and then rein them in? I tend to plan out where we are going. Are you saying we should be more collaborative? I have a plan. I have a thought in mind when I'm directing my choir, but at the same time, I think there is something to be said with allowing the choir, and maybe not in a performance setting, but allowing the choir in a rehearsal setting to take some liberties and seeing where it might go. Because sometimes I've been proven wrong with maybe how I think of a piece, and then I let the choir kind of do their thing. Just one time, or I say, try it this way, or I change it up, I switch it up. And then all of a sudden I get a different sense of maybe where this song could possibly go. So as a director, that's a great question, because I think, yes, you can have a plan, you can have an idea, and absolutely, if you know what you want, yeah, you're going to still ask for certain things, but at the same time, I think there in a rehearsal setting can be some room for allowing your singers to try some things out. And then as you get closer to your performance, you might start making some solid decisions on some musical things that you want to happen. Is that, I think, hopefully that makes sense. Would you agree a little bit, Andrew?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that I think of it is, as a conductor, we mark every breath, and we have an idea for every phrase, but how many times have we had to change a breath mark because it doesn't make sense with what our choir throws back at us? And if we can think about how the choir informs where we set our breaths, sometimes they might also inform us of some other things that we might have not thought of as well, that they might have a better idea than we do. And great if it helps the music sound better. Pat says, I think the illustration of Darcy is a real dilemma for me. It's not volume, but I have to do a sound match and find it very difficult. Yeah, that's a real thought. I think it comes back to, you know, you've heard choir directors say, listen louder than you sing. You know, and I think it comes down to that as well, that we want to be aware and mindful. I'm not a proponent of my singer, and this, you know, everybody's going to feel differently. I'm not a proponent of my singers coming in as a clean slate. I want all of your baggage in your sound, and we'll go from there. I'd rather you come in messy and full of passion and life, and we can get this than coming in as a MIDI file and just lining everything up. But that there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And my way is not the best way even. It just happens to be my way and what I can offer. So yes, I think that, you know, balancing those things out. I appreciate that feedback. Good. Be nice if you offered a session for choral directors on different ways to arrange the singers. Yeah, something to think about. That's a big topic. There was a great thing at ACDA National in Kansas City, a great session on arranging choirs in different ways. So I have that handout. I don't know where it is, but that's great.
Are you seeing, I'm trying to see if there's we missed any questions. While you're, maybe Andrew, while you're kind of looking over that, I will say, so the next session next week is, it's on youth singing and how it informs the adult experience. And that's going to be with Jamia Sale and Christy Elsner. She is the founder and director of the Allegro Choirs of Kansas City. It's an amazing children's choir here in the Kansas City area. And so they will be leading that discussion next week. So just a little heads up for you all.
Wolfgang says, another thing that really helps and sounds very effective, but to speak as you sing throughout the day. Yes, we talked about this a little bit during our 7 healthy habits of sort of speaking up there at different times. Yeah, so that's great. That's great. Great advice. Looking through here again, thank you everybody who's joined us this evening. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've been with us the whole journey, then kudos to you as well. We've got 2 sessions left, and we're excited about those as well. Michael asks, what are your ground rules for singers offering their feedback during rehearsal in an email after? Jenny, what are your thoughts?
To be honest, my personal preference would be if it was something that could wait, to do it afterwards, either to me in person or in an email. It depends on what the feedback is, I guess. I definitely appreciate if they're hearing something that maybe needs to be addressed at that time. By all means, I'm open to it, but at the same time, I think I often ask myself, like, is this something that I can wait? If I'm the singer, I kind of will say, maybe I just need to bring this up to the director at a break or afterwards. Because I think you all agree, or many people would agree, it's better if we just keep singing and utilize our time as much as we can. So that's my personal preference as a director.
I don't mind a little bit of chaos in my rehearsal, but I like my singers to know that I have a plan and that I am open to anything and everything that they would like to say if they agree to let me get through my plan first. So rather than, because we'll sing it and then somebody wants to say, well, so-and-so was flat, or this didn't work, or we missed this. I was listening as well, and I have my priorities, right? And so I want to get through my priorities, and maybe you heard something that I didn't, or I'll get through it, maybe not in the order that you want, but I'll get there. And then if I haven't, if I've finished my priorities and I still haven't fixed it, then then I think that that's the time to bring up those thoughts and questions. Oh, great. Michael says hello. Awesome. Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, and go Patty for starting as a director. That's great. That's great. Scanning for other questions. If we missed your question, we apologize. If you want to type it in again, go ahead and do that.
And the recording will be available if anybody wants to go back and review some things, or if they know somebody who maybe missed out on tonight, we'll get the recording up of tonight's session here very soon.
Great. All right, we are right at 8:30 or 7:30, depending on what time zone you're in. And so, do you think we could do some? Yeah, so we are already in discussions about if, when, how, what, where, things might be if for this sort of experience again. So the best thing for us would be to fill out those surveys. So we sent out a link for a survey. There will be a link for a survey that comes out after this. We'd love to know your thoughts, what we did well, what we didn't do well, what you would like to know. You know, this is our first go around as well. Well, it's our fourth technically if you count every week. But we, you know, this is a brand new idea that we started this summer. So we'd love to make it as useful as we can. So yeah, as maybe something in the winter might be great. All right, Jenny, any closing things that we need to do our due diligence on?
I think we've touched on everything. Yeah, it was just great seeing everybody, and thanks for all the great chatty chats and questions that we got, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
People can still register, so if you have a friend, you know, spread out the word. We've had great attendance every night, but you know, there's room for anybody and everybody. So we've got 2 sessions left. Invite them to come. They can still, it's not too late. Thank you all. Have a beautiful evening. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks. See you later.